My CEO fired me for blocking his daughter from installing a trendy app on our classified mainframe. He called me paranoid. He didn't know the app was a Trojan Horse for foreign intelligence. When he overrode my lockout, the NSA didn't just trace the leak, they raided the building. Before this story continues, tell me, where are you watching from today and what's the temperature? I read every single comment. Buckle up, because the fallout from this arrogance was louder than a sonic boom. The server room was my sanctuary. It was kept at a precise 64 degrees, a constant, dry chill that smelled of ozone and expensive copper. The hum of the cooling fans was white noise to most people, but to me, it was a heartbeat. I was 34, the youngest director of network operations in the history of Apex Logistics, and I knew the rhythm of this digital pulse better than I knew my own blood pressure. It was 10:15 a.m. on a Tuesday when that rhythm was interrupted by the sharp, rhythmic clack-clack-clack of designer heels on the raised flooring. I didn't turn around immediately from my console. I was deep in a routine firewall audit, watching packets of data flow like water through a sluice gate. "Evelyn, there you are." The voice was high, airy, and laced with an unearned familiarity. I spun my chair around. Sophia Phillips stood there, holding a tablet like it was a royal decree. She was 24, fresh out of a marketing program that her father, Simon Phillips, our CEO, had likely paid a building wing to get her into. Last week, she had been appointed the VP of Digital Innovation, a title that meant absolutely nothing but cost the company 6 figures a year. "Sophia," I said, keeping my voice neutral, "you need a badge to be in here. This is a secure zone." She waved a manicured hand, dismissing the security protocols that protected billions of dollars in logistics data. "Daddy said I have clearance. Anyway, I need you to install something. Now." She shoved the tablet into my face. On the screen was a neon-colored landing page for an app called Streamline. It looked like a cheap productivity tool, the kind that promises to organize your life, but mostly just harvests your contacts. "I need this on the mainframe," she said, popping her gum. "It's a workflow optimizer. I want the whole creative team to be able to sync their mood boards in real time with the logistics database." I blinked. "You want to install a third-party social app on the mainframe, the same mainframe that handles Defense Department shipping routes?" "It's not a social app, Evelyn. It's innovation," she scoffed. "The interface we have now is so ugly. It's just text and numbers. Streamline makes it visual." I took the tablet gently, mostly to move it away from my nose, and scrolled down to the developer info. My stomach tightened. The developer was listed as a shell company based in a region known for state-sponsored cyber espionage. The permissions list was a nightmare. It asked for root access, microphone control, and crucially, unrestricted outbound data transmission. "Sophia," I said, handing the tablet back, "absolutely not." Her smile faltered. "Excuse me. This isn't secure software. It's untrusted, unvetted code asking for root privileges. If I install this on the network, it opens a backdoor to everything. Our client lists, our shipping manifests, our financial data. It's a hard no." Her eyes narrowed. She didn't look like a VP. She looked like a teenager who had been told she couldn't borrow the car. "You're just the IT girl, Evelyn. I'm the VP of Innovation. If I say we need it, we need it." "I'm the Director of Network Ops," I corrected her, standing up. I was 5'7", but in that moment I felt 10 feet tall. "And my job is to make sure this company doesn't get hacked. You can install that on your personal phone if you want, though I wouldn't recommend it, but it is never touching my servers." Sophia let out a short, incredulous laugh. "Your servers? They're my father's servers. I'll be back." She spun on her heels and stormed out. The heavy security door hissed shut behind her, sealing the silence back inside. I sat down, my heart rate slightly elevated. I logged the interaction in the daily security blotter. 10:22 a.m. denied installation of unauthorized software, Streamline, requested by S. Phillips due to severe security vulnerabilities. I thought that was the end of it. I was naive. 2 hours later, my desk phone rang. The caller ID read Executive Suite. I sighed, picked up my laptop, and headed for the elevator. As I rode up to the top floor, the air changed. The utilitarian gray carpet of the ops floor was replaced by plush, deep pile wool. The air smelled less like ozone and more like expensive espresso and leather polish. Simon Phillips' office was a monument to his ego. 3 walls were glass, overlooking the city skyline. The 4th wall was covered in awards that I knew his PR team had bought. Simon sat behind a mahogany desk that was large enough to land a plane on. He was 60, tan, and wearing a suit that cost more than my first car. Sophia was sitting on the leather sofa, scrolling on her phone. She didn't look up when I walked in. "Evelyn," Simon said, not offering me a seat. "Sophia tells me you're obstructing the new digital initiative." "I'm maintaining network integrity, Simon," I said, keeping my tone professional. "Sophia asked me to install Streamline on the core servers. I analyzed the packet request. The software is a security nightmare. It requires root access and sends encrypted data packets to a server in a non-extradition country." Simon waved his hand dismissively. "You tech people," he groaned, "always with the packets and the roots. You're missing the big picture, Evelyn. We need to be agile. We need to look modern." "We need to be secure," I countered. "We hold contracts with 3 major government agencies. If we install unvetted software and suffer a breach, we don't just lose money. We go to prison. Or at least, the people responsible do." Simon's face reddened slightly. He stood up and walked around the desk, leaning against the front of it to loom over me. "Are you threatening me, Evelyn?" "I'm stating facts. That app is a Trojan horse waiting to happen. It's not about being modern, it's about basic digital hygiene." "It's about you being paranoid," Sophia chimed in from the couch. She finally looked up, a smug grin plastered on her face. I looked it up. "The app has 5 stars on the store. Everyone loves it. You just don't want to do the work to integrate it because you're lazy and stuck in the past." I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. I had spent 6 years building this network from a fragile, leaky mess into a fortress. I had worked weekends, holidays, and nights while Sophia was partying in Ibiza on her father's dime. "I am protecting this company," I said, my voice hardening. "Simon, look at the code. I can show you." "I don't want to look at code," Simon shouted, slamming his hand on the desk. "I pay you to make things work, not to tell me no. You think you're the only person who understands computers. Sophia has a vision for this company. A vision that involves us looking like a 21st century enterprise, not a dusty warehouse." He took a breath, adjusting his tie. "You're too rigid, Evelyn. You treat this company like it's the Pentagon. It's logistics. It's boxes on trucks." "It's data," I said, "and data is more valuable than the boxes." "Stop being difficult, Evelyn," Simon spat. "I am giving you a direct order. Install the app. Enable the integration for Sophia's team. Today." I looked at him, really looked at him. I saw a man who had inherited a fortune and convinced himself he was a genius. I saw a father who couldn't say no to his spoiled daughter. And I saw a disaster rushing toward us like a freight train. "I cannot do that, Simon," I said clearly. "It violates our compliance protocols. It violates our insurance policy. And I won't put my name on the command that compromises this network." Simon's eyes went cold. "Then don't put your name on it. Give me the admin override code." The room went silent. The admin override code, the keys to the kingdom. "Simon," I whispered, "you don't know what you're asking." "I'm the CEO," he roared. "I own the keys. Give me the code or pack your things." My hands were trembling, not from fear, but from a potent mix of adrenaline and rage. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my secure token key. "If I give you this code," I said, my voice shaking, "I am formally registering my objection. I want it on record that I advised against this under the strongest possible terms." "Noted," Simon said, extending his hand impatiently. "You're so dramatic. It's an app, Evelyn, not a nuclear launch." I pulled up the admin console on my laptop, which I was still holding. I connected to the main screen in the office so they could see it. The terminal blinked a green cursor against a black background. "Type it in," Simon commanded. I didn't hand him the token. Instead, I typed in my resignation from responsibility. I entered the command to open the sandbox environment, a safe zone, hoping to trick him. Sophia stood up and walked over. "Daddy, look, she's putting it in a sandbox. That means it's isolated. It won't sync with the main creative files. She's still blocking it." Simon looked at me, betrayal in his eyes. "Is that true?" "It's standard procedure to test." "Stop lying to me." Simon shoved me aside. He wasn't physically violent, but the force of his arrogance was enough to push me off balance. He sat at my laptop. "How do I make it live? How do I make it work everywhere?" "You can't," I said, crossing my arms. "Not without my biometric authorization." Simon laughed. It was a cruel, hollow sound. "You really think I didn't prepare for this? You think you're indispensable." He picked up his desk phone and dialed an extension. "IT support, this is Simon. Reset the director's biometric lock. Authorization Alpha 10. Yes, now." He hung up and looked at me. "I built this company's bylaws. I have a master key for everything, Evelyn, even your precious little firewalls." My laptop screen flickered. A prompt appeared. "Biometric bypass approved BY CEO." I felt a cold pit in my stomach. He was actually going to do it. He was going to bypass the security layers I had spent years perfecting. "Sophia," Simon said, gesturing to the chair. "Come here, install your app." Sophia sat down in my chair, giggling. She tapped the screen, authorized the download, and hit execute. On the large monitor on the wall, a progress bar appeared. "Installing Streamline, granting root access." "See," Sophia smirked at me, "the world didn't end." I watched the screen. At 99%, the bar paused for a microsecond. Then, a small, almost imperceptible command line flashed in the bottom corner. "Packet sent, destination, redacted IP." It was happening. The data exfiltration had started the second the install finished. They weren't just installing an app, they were opening a tunnel. "You just handed them the keys," I said quietly. Simon stood up, smoothing his suit jacket. "I think we're done here, Evelyn. You've proven that you can't get with the program. You're obstructive, paranoid, and frankly, a liability to our culture." He looked at me with disdain. "You're fired. Get your things. Security will escort you out." I looked at the screen one last time. The data transfer rate was spiking. It was subtle, hidden under the guise of syncing, but I knew what I was looking at. "You're making a mistake, Simon," I said. "The only mistake I made," he replied, turning his back to me to look out the window, "was hiring a woman who thinks she knows better than the man who signs her checks. Get out." I didn't argue, I didn't scream. I just closed my laptop, which was now locked out of the system anyway, and walked out of the office. As I waited for the elevator, I checked my watch. 1:15 p.m. The data leak had begun, but Simon had forgotten one thing: I was paranoid. And paranoid people always have a backup plan. The walk from the executive suite to my desk felt longer than a marathon. The office, usually a hive of low-level chatter and keyboard clatter, had gone dead silent. Bad news travels faster than fiber optics in a corporate environment. Heads bowed as I passed. People I had hired, people I had trained, suddenly found their spreadsheets incredibly fascinating. I reached my office, my former office, and found 2 security guards waiting. It wasn't the regular contract guys who napped at the front desk. It was the internal risk management team. Big Mike, the head of physical security, looked at his shoes. "Sorry, Ev," he muttered, his face flushed. "Orders from the top, immediate escort, no network access allowed." "It's okay, Mike," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "He's just doing his job, you do yours." I didn't argue, I didn't try to log back in. I knew Simon. If I touched a keyboard now, he'd spin it as sabotage. I picked up a cardboard box and started filling it. A framed photo of my dog, Buster. A stress ball shaped like a hand grenade. My degree from MIT. I left the awards. I left the company-branded swag. I wanted nothing that carried the Apex Logistics logo. As I was placing a succulent into the box, my personal phone buzzed in my pocket. A notification from HR. Subject, notice of termination, effective immediately. Reason, gross insubordination. Refusal to execute direct CEO directives, creating a hostile work environment. Gross insubordination, I whispered, reading the preview. That meant no severance. No unemployment benefits without a fight. Simon wasn't just firing me, he was trying to burn me down so I couldn't afford a lawyer to sue him. "We need your badge, Ev," Mike said softly. I unclipped the plastic rectangle that had been my identity for 6 years. I looked at the photo, younger, less tired, full of optimism about building the future. I tossed it onto the desk. It clattered loudly in the silence. "Walk me out, Mike." We marched through the bullpen. I kept my head high, eyes forward. I could feel Sophia's presence somewhere in the building, likely gloating, likely setting up her profile on Streamline and inviting the entire marketing department to join. The automatic doors of the lobby slid open, hitting me with a wall of humid, 90-degree city air. It was a stark contrast to the 64 degrees of the server room. "Take care of yourself, Ev," Mike said, handing me a slip of paper. "If you need a reference." "Thanks, Mike, but I don't think I'll be needing a reference from this place." I walked to my car, put the box in the passenger seat, and sat there for a moment. The silence of the car was suffocating. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. They thought they had stripped me of my power. They thought taking my badge and my access meant I was blind. But Simon had forgotten who built the network. He forgot that before I was a director, I was an architect. I didn't drive home. I drove to the one place where I could watch the world burn without getting singed. The Rusty Capacitor wasn't a bar you found on Yelp. It was a basement dive in the old industrial district, the kind of place where the Wi-Fi was air-gapped and the patrons preferred cash to credit. It was the unofficial clubhouse for the city's gray hat hackers, privacy advocates, and burnout sysadmins. I found Dylan Morris in the back booth, exactly where I knew he'd be. Dylan looked like a lumberjack who had gotten lost in a Best Buy. He wore a flannel shirt, a beanie, and had a beard that hid half his face. But his eyes were sharp, constantly scanning the room. On the table in front of him was a laptop covered in stickers and a glass of bourbon, neat. "Evelyn Carter," he said without looking up from his screen. "To what do I owe the pleasure? Did the corporate world finally chew you up?" "Spit me out is more like it," I said, sliding into the booth opposite him. I flagged the bartender for a sparkling water. "Simon Phillips fired me an hour ago." Dylan stopped typing. He looked up, his eyebrows raising. "The logistics king? I thought you were his golden goose. Kept his network tighter than the Federal Reserve." I was, until his daughter, Sophia, decided she needed to install Streamline on the mainframe. Dylan actually choked on his drink. He coughed, slamming the glass down. "Streamline, the productivity app, the one that's been lighting up the threat boards for the last 3 weeks." "The very same," I said. "I blocked it. Simon overrode me, manually. He gave root access to a verified malware vector because his daughter thought the interface was pretty." Dylan let out a low whistle. "Man, that's spectacular. That's Darwin Awards level of stupid." He turned his laptop around. On the screen was a flowing cascade of code, a live feed from a threat intelligence monitoring system. "You know what Streamline is, right?" Dylan asked, his voice dropping to a whisper. "It's not just adware. It's a reconnaissance tool developed by Unit 8200, not the Israeli one, the other one. The guys who like to steal intellectual property from defense contractors." "I know," I said. "Apex holds shipping contracts for the duty we move parts for the Navy." Dylan leaned back, crossing his arms. So, you're out, the firewall is down, the fox is in the henhouse, and the farmer just shot the sheepdog. Exactly, but I need you to confirm it. I can't touch their network. It would be a crime, but you. I'm a cyber warfare analyst for a defense contractor. Dylan grinned, his teeth white against his dark beard. Scanning for threats isn't hacking. It's proactive neighborhood watch. He cracked his knuckles. You want to see if the bleeding has started? I want to know when the NSA is going to notice, I said. Dylan's fingers flew across the keyboard. If Simon gave it root access, give me 5 minutes. I'll check the public traffic nodes. If Streamline is phoning home, it'll be loud. I sipped my water, watching him work. We had been rivals at MIT, constantly trying to outcode each other. Now, he was the only person in the world who understood the magnitude of what just happened. Got it, Dylan said, his face draining of color. What? He turned the screen back to me. It's not just phoning home, Ev, it's screaming. The graph on Dylan's screen looked like a heart attack. A massive, vertical spike of red data packets leaving a US-based IP address and funneling straight to a server farm in Eastern Europe. Holy mother of bandwidth, Dylan muttered. Look at the packet size. That's not user data. That's not syncing contacts. That's database replication. It's the mainframe, I said, feeling a cold shiver despite the humidity of the basement. Sophia connected it to the core. The app is designed to scrape file structures. It's downloading the entire shipping manifest. It gets worse, Dylan said, pointing to a second line on the graph. See this frequency? That's an encrypted beacon. It's looking for other connected devices. It's trying to jump the air gap to the secure manufacturing subnet. I checked my watch. 3:45 p.m. It's been live for less than 3 hours. They're moving fast. They know they have a limited window before someone notices. Who's watching the store, Ev? Nobody, I said. I was the store. My team is good, but they don't have the authority to override the CEO. And Simon probably told them everything is fine. He thinks it's just the innovation team working. Innovation? Dylan scoffed. He's innovating his way into a federal indictment. On the screen, the red spike grew wider. The volume of data being exfiltrated was staggering. Terabytes. Years of proprietary logistics algorithms, client lists, military shipping routes. All of it flying out the digital door while Simon probably sat in his office congratulating himself on being a disruptor. Should we call the FBI? Dylan asked. I hesitated. If we call now, Simon spins it. He claims I planted it. He claims I'm a disgruntled employee who sabotaged the system on my way out. He's already set the narrative with the gross insubordination firing. So we let it burn. No, I said, leaning in. We wait for the automated tripwires. The NSA has passive sniffers on all defense contractor traffic. When that much data hits a foreign server, an alarm goes off at Fort Meade. It's automatic. True, Dylan nodded, but that could take hours. By then, the company is hollowed out. That's the price of arrogance, I said, though my heart ached for the work I had lost. But Dylan, I need you to capture this log. I need proof that the data stream started after my credentials were revoked. I need a time-stamped, third-party record that shows the breach originated from the CEO's override authorization. Way ahead of you, Dylan tapped a key. I'm mirroring the traffic metadata to a secure cloud drive. I've got the handshake. I've got the IP origin, and look here. He pointed to a string of metadata text. User agent, Streamline v12 auth, admin override S. Phillips. He didn't just authorize it, Dylan laughed darkly. He signed his name to the warrant. Save it, I commanded. Make 3 copies. Done, so what do we do now? I looked at the red spike, watching the lifeblood of Apex Logistics drain away. Now, I said, checking the time, now we order dinner. Because in about 2 hours, the silent alarm at the NSA is going to turn into a very loud raid. And I want to be watching the news when it happens. The thing about modern cyber warfare is that it's terrifyingly quiet. There are no explosions, no sirens, no red lights flashing in the hallway, at least, not at first. The death of a company happens in absolute silence. It was 7:00 p.m. Dylan and I were still at the rusty capacitor. The afterwork crowd had filled the dive bar, creating a hum of conversation that masked the catastrophe unfolding on Dylan's laptop screen. "They're taking the databases in alphabetical order," Dylan murmured, taking a bite of a burger. "They just finished Client Financials 2023, and now they're moving on to Duty Logistics Archive." I watched the progress bar on his packet sniffer. It was mesmerizing in a sickly way. Every pixel represented a trade secret, a social security number, or a classified shipping route. "Why hasn't the internal IDS triggered?" I asked, though I suspected the answer. "Because Sophia gave it root access," Dylan reminded me, wiping ketchup from his beard. "The intrusion detection system sees Streamline as a superuser. It thinks the CEO is personally copying these files. It's not flagging it as a threat, it's flagging it as executive backup." I closed my eyes. Simon turned off the immune system. "But here's the kicker," Dylan said, tapping the screen. "Look at the destination IP again." I squinted. The IP address had shifted. It was no longer bouncing through the proxy in Eastern Europe. It was directlining to a known state-sponsored server farm. "That's the tripwire," I whispered. "Bingo." At that exact moment, miles away in Fort Meade, Maryland, a very different kind of screen would be lighting up. The National Security Agency monitors all traffic related to defense contractors. When a duty contractor starts piping terabytes of data to a hostile nation, it triggers a silent alarm. It doesn't call the company. It doesn't send an email. It alerts the Cyber Command Rapid Response Team. "They know," I said, checking the time. 7:15 p.m. The NSA just got the ping. "Do you think Simon knows?" "Simon is probably at dinner," I said, picturing him at his favorite steakhouse, swirling a glass of Cabernet, boasting to his friends about how he streamlined the IT department today. He has no idea that he just became a national security threat. Dylan closed his laptop. "The leak is done, they grabbed the core files, the connection just severed." "They got what they wanted," I said, feeling a heavy stone settle in my gut. "Now comes the cleanup." "You mean the fallout," Dylan corrected. "Go home, Ev, get some sleep. Tomorrow is going to be the loudest day of your life." I didn't sleep, though. I sat up in my living room, staring at the phone, waiting for it to ring. I knew the bureaucracy moved fast when it came to treason, even accidental treason. At 3:00 a.m., my phone didn't ring, but a notification popped up on my local news app. "Breaking, federal agents cordon off tech park in downtown district." I clicked the link. The photo was grainy, taken from a distance, but the building was unmistakable. It was Apex Log. Istix, and parked in front, blocking the entrance where I used to swipe my badge every morning, were 3 unmarked black SUVs. The silent alarm wasn't silent anymore. The next morning, the sky was a bruised purple, heavy with rain that hadn't fallen yet. I drove to the office, not to work, but to witness. I parked my sedan in the coffee shop lot across the street, a vantage point I had used 1,000 times to check if the morning traffic was bad. The scene across the street was like something out of a movie, except the dread was real. The Apex Logistics building was on lockdown. Yellow tape fluttered in the wind, wrapped around the pristine glass pillars of the entrance. But it wasn't police tape. It was federal tape. There were men and women in windbreakers with bold yellow letters on the back, FBI and DHS. They were swarming the lobby. I saw them carrying out server racks, my server racks. They were seizing the physical hardware. My phone buzzed. It was a number I didn't recognize. "This is Evelyn Carter," I answered. "Ms. Carter, this is Special Agent Miller, FBI Cyber Division. We are currently executing a warrant at Apex Logistics." My heart hammered against my ribs. I saw the news. "We need you on site immediately," Miller said. His voice was clipped, professional, and brokered no argument. You are listed as the primary point of contact for the duty compliance protocols. I was fired yesterday, Agent Miller, I said, testing the waters. We know, he replied. We have the termination log, that's why we need you. We can't get into the encrypted partitions and the current staff is unable to assist. How far away are you? I'm across the street. Come to the front, do not speak to the press. I hung up and took a deep breath. I smoothed my blazer, checked my reflection in the rearview mirror, and stepped out into the humid morning air. Crossing the street felt like crossing a battle line. As I approached the yellow tape, a camera crew from a local station turned toward me, sensing movement. Ma'am, do you work here? Do you know why the FBI is raiding the building? A reporter shouted, thrusting a microphone in my direction. I ignored them, ducking under the tape where a uniformed agent was waiting. I'm Evelyn Carter. ID. I handed him my driver's license. He checked a list on a clipboard, nodded, and lifted the tape higher. Agent Miller is in the boardroom, 12th floor. The lobby was chaos. Employees were huddled in the cafeteria, looking terrified. Phones had been confiscated. Laptops were being bagged and tagged. I saw Big Mike, the security guard, sitting on a bench looking pale. He gave me a small, grim nod as I passed. I took the elevator up. The silence of the server room was gone, replaced by the chaotic noise of a federal raid. When the elevator doors opened on the executive floor, the smell of expensive espresso was gone, replaced by the stale scent of fear. Agents were rifling through filing cabinets. Simon's assistant, a sweet woman named Brenda, was crying softly at her desk. I walked toward the boardroom. The glass walls, designed to show off Simon's power, now displayed his humiliation. Inside, Simon Phillips sat at the head of the table. He wasn't wearing his jacket. His tie was loosened. He looked 10 years older than he had yesterday. Sophia was next to him, her face streaked with mascara, holding a tissue like a lifeline. Standing over them was Agent Miller, a man who looked like he was carved out of granite. Miller turned as I entered. Ms. Carter. Yes, I said, stepping into the room. Simon's head snapped up. His eyes went wide, and for a second I saw a flash of hope. Then it turned into something ugly. Her, Simon shouted, pointing a shaking finger at me. She's the one, she did this. The accusation hung in the air, heavy and desperate. Sit down, Mr. Phillips, Agent Miller barked, not even looking at Simon. He kept his eyes on me. Ms. Carter, please take a seat. I sat at the opposite end of the table. The distance between us felt like a courtroom. She's the one who set it up, Simon continued, his voice cracking. She was disgruntled. I fired her yesterday for incompetence and she must have planted a virus on her way out. That's why the data leaked. Sophia nodded vigorously, sniffing. Yeah, she was always jealous of me. She hated that I was the VP. She probably hacked us from her car. I looked at them. I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt a cold, clinical detachment. Agent Miller, I said calmly, I assume you've pulled the server logs. We have, Miller said, but the encryption on the primary drive is military grade. We need the master key to verify the timeline. Don't give it to him, Simon yelled. She'll delete the evidence. She's trying to frame me. Miller slammed his hand on the table. The sound was like a gunshot. Mr. Phillips, you are currently under investigation for violating the Espionage Act, gross negligence regarding classified data, and obstruction of justice. If you interrupt one more time, I will have you removed in handcuffs. Do you understand? Simon shrank back into his chair, his mouth snapping shut. Miller turned back to me. Ms. Carter, the key. I can decrypt the logs, I said. But before I do, I want to state for the record that my access was revoked at 1:15 p.m. yesterday. Any activity after that time was not authorized by me. We know you were terminated, Miller said. Just open the drive. I pulled a laptop from an agent's hands, a clean forensic machine, and connected it to the main port on the conference table. My fingers flew across the keys. I entered my master administrative sequence, a code I had memorized 6 years ago. Access granted. The main screen at the front of the room flickered to life. It displayed the server activity log in high definition. Filter by root access changes in the last 24 hours, Miller commanded. I typed the command. The screen populated with a single, glaring entry. Timestamp, yesterday 1:28 p.m. event, admin override initiated. Authorization, user, S. Phillips CEO. Action, install package, streamline v1, 2, app flag, security protocols disabled by user S. Phillips. The room went dead silent. That, Simon stammered, that doesn't prove anything. She could have spoofed my login. Mr. Phillips, Miller said, his voice dangerously low. This log shows that you manually overrode the CISO-S lockout. It shows you used your biometric key, your fingerprint, to authorize the installation of foreign malware. Miller scrolled down. Timestamp, yesterday 1:30 p.m. event, outbound connection established. Destination, redacted, foreign intelligence server. Volume, 4.2 terabytes transferred. Miller turned to Simon. You didn't just install an app, sir. You opened a direct line to a hostile state. You handed them the blueprints for the Navy's supply chain. Simon's face was the color of ash. I didn't know. It was just for the creative team. Sophia said it was safe. He threw his daughter under the bus without a second thought. Sophia gasped. Daddy, you told me to do it. You said Evelyn was just being a bitch. Language, Miller snapped. He looked at the agents by the door. Read them their rights. Wait, Simon scrambled up. I can fix this. I have money. We can pay a fine. This isn't a parking ticket, Mr. Phillips, Miller said, signaling the agents. This is national security. As the agents moved in to handcuff the CEO of Apex Logistics, Simon looked at me. His arrogance was gone, replaced by terrified pleading. Evelyn, he begged, tell them I'm not a spy. Tell them it was a mistake. I looked at the man who had called me paranoid, the man who had fired me for doing my job. I can't do that, Simon, I said softly. I'm just the IT girl, remember. Get them out of here, Miller ordered. As they dragged Simon and a sobbing Sophia out of the boardroom, Miller turned to me. He didn't smile, but his posture relaxed slightly. Good work on the logs, Ms. Carter, but we have a bigger problem. What's that? I asked. The company is frozen, the assets are seized, but the data is still out there and the network is compromised. We need someone to clean this mess up. Someone who knows where the bodies are buried. He slid a file across the table toward me. We aren't shutting Apex down, Miller said. We're seizing it, and we need a trustee to run it. Even in handcuffs, money talks. Simon Phillips didn't spend the night in a cell. He spent it in a holding room with 3 lawyers who cost more per hour than I made in a month. By the next afternoon, the narrative had shifted. I was sitting in a conference room at the FBI field office, staring at a monitor. On the screen was a live feed of Simon's legal team giving a press conference on the courthouse steps. Mr. Phillips is a victim of corporate sabotage, his lead attorney, a shark named Evelyn Vance, announced to the cameras. The former employee, Ms. Carter, created a confusing and entrapment-based security interface. She tricked the CEO into authorizing a breach to cover her own negligent architecture. We will be filing a countersuit for malicious intent. I felt my blood pressure spike. They're trying to make it look like I set him up. Agent Miller, sitting across from me, didn't look impressed. He was eating a turkey sandwich with the methodical precision of a machine. It's a standard defense, Evelyn. The button was too shiny, so I had to push it. They're trying to create reasonable doubt to avoid the espionage charges. Will it work? In a jury trial? Maybe, Miller admitted, wiping his mouth. Juries don't understand rootkits and packet sniffers. If they paint you as the bitter IT director who laid a trap, they might get him plea bargained down to a misdemeanor. He walks with a fine. You get dragged through civil court foe. Our years. I clenched my fists. He ignored 3 warnings. He physically pushed me out of the way. It's he said, she said, Miller said. Unless we have something that proves he understood the risk. Specifically, not just that he clicked okay, but that he knew exactly what he was doing. I leaned back in my chair, a small, cold smile forming on my lips. Miller, do you have the laptop we seized? The one he used for the override? Evidence locker 4, why? Because I didn't just build a firewall, I said. I built a dead man's switch, and Simon didn't just click OK. He signed a confession. 20 minutes later, we were in the digital forensics lab. The laptop, my old laptop, was connected to a Faraday-caged monitor. When I designed the executive override protocol, I explained to Miller and 2 other agents. I knew that someday an executive would try to do something stupid. I knew they would claim ignorance. So I added a layer. I navigated to a hidden partition on the hard drive, a sector labeled System BLACKBOX. The override doesn't just ask for a password, I said, typing in the decryption key. It activates the system's webcam and microphone for exactly 10 seconds to capture a verbal confirmation of liability. It's a feature I buried in the terms of service that Simon signed 3 years ago and never read. Show me, Miller said, leaning in. I executed the file labeled override log video 091223, MP4. The video player popped up. The angle was from the laptop's webcam, looking up at Simon's face. He looked angry, flushed, and arrogant. Sophia was visible in the background, smirking. The system audio spoke in a robotic voice. Warning, you are about to bypass critical security protocols. This action will expose the network to unverified external threats. State your name, and I accept full liability to proceed. On the screen, Simon rolled his eyes. He looked directly into the lens and shouted, I'm Simon Phillips, the CEO of this company. I accept liability, and I accept that I am firing this paranoid director. Just do it. He then slammed the enter key. The video ended. The lab was silent for a solid 5 seconds. Then, one of the junior agents let out a low whistle. He literally said it. He accepted liability, I said, crossing my arms. On video, while acknowledging the security warning. Miller let out a short, sharp laugh. Well, that kills the confusing interface defense. That kills the entrapment defense. That's not just a smoking gun, Evelyn, that's a mushroom cloud. He patted me on the shoulder, a rare gesture of warmth. I'm going to send this to the U.S. attorney. I think Simon's lawyers are about to have a very bad afternoon. It was over. The lie was dead. And Simon Phillips had recorded his own political suicide note. 3 days later, the news broke. Simon Phillips had been denied bail. The video of him screaming at his laptop had been entered into evidence, and while it wasn't public yet, the rumors were enough to tank the stock price. The board of directors fired him in absentia. Sophia was quietly removed from the building, her VP title dissolving into thin air. But the company remained, the contracts remained, and the mess remained. I stood in the lobby of Apex Logistics. It was 9:00 a.m. The yellow tape was gone, but the atmosphere was tentative. People were whispering, wondering if they still had jobs. I wasn't wearing my old cardigan and jeans. I was wearing a tailored navy suit, and around my neck wasn't a standard employee badge. It was a federal ID on a lanyard that read trustee/interim administrator. The elevator ride up to the executive floor felt different this time. It wasn't a walk to the gallows. It was a return to the throne. When the doors opened, Brenda, the assistant, looked up. Her eyes went wide. Ms. Carter, she gasped, we didn't know if. It's okay, Brenda, I said gently. I'm back, and we have a lot of work to do. I walked into Simon's office. It had been stripped of his personal effects. The awards were gone. The desk was empty. I sat down in the leather chair. It was too big, too soft, and reeked of ego. I made a mental note to order a standing desk tomorrow. I spun the chair around to look out at the city skyline. I had won. I had vindicated my reputation, protected the national interest, and removed the people who treated security like a joke. Porch wisdom. I'm writing this from the balcony of my new apartment, paid for by the consulting retainer the government now pays me. The sun is setting, and the air is cool. If you're reading this, you're probably someone who takes pride in their work. You're the person who checks the details, who follows the rules, who worries about the things the visionaries ignore. Here is what I learned from the fall of Simon Phillips. 1. Documentation is your shield. Never rely on a verbal okay. If someone asks you to do something dangerous, unethical, or stupid, get it in writing. If I hadn't logged that interaction, if I hadn't had that video backup, I would be the one in a cell right now. 2. Competence is a threat to incompetence. People like Simon hate people like us because our expertise reminds them of their ignorance. Don't shrink yourself to make them comfortable. When they call you rigid or paranoid, wear it like armor. It means you're doing your job. 3. The cool option is usually the trap. In tech, in relationships, in life, if something looks too flashy and asks for too much access up front, it's a Trojan horse. Stick to the boring, secure protocols. They keep you safe. Don't let the Simons of the world bully you into opening the door. Keep your keys close. Trust your gut. And always, always keep a backup. If this story of justice touched you, please like, share, and subscribe to hear more tales from the trenches.